Well, first of all, I want to get us started by saying thank you. It's been so exciting to have so many of you as thought leaders in this space to be at our office here, our headquarters too, with AWS. We're really excited to host the event, and I'm especially excited to talk with our great partner, Greg Ruppert, who's an EVP at FINRA, who leads supervision and regulation and is really leading the way in how we rethink a lot of the supervision process and how we dig in to identify instances of fraud, but also how we just rethink efficiencies across our business. Greg, just as getting started, there's so much that you've done to really set a vision for what this space would look like. I would love to just start the conversation by having you share a bit about what you see as the vision for supervision with the adoption of AI, and certainly as we lead into agentic AI as well.
Great. No, thanks. First of all, thank you for having us. Thanks all of you for coming. Thanks for your partnership over the past several years. It's been great. I think I'd start off by saying, what's foundation to our vision is that FINRA is not necessarily new to the space. We were early adopters of the cloud with all of you. And then we've really kind of moved into using various types of models throughout the years on our surveillance platforms as we look at the markets, but even more recently with some of the more shifts in data on how we can ingest that from everything from customer complaints to the other types of data that we get. As FINRA is a self-regulatory organization, though, we also have the opportunity to have a closer relationship with the member firms that we regulate, and it also kind of turns into a little bit of a partnership to provide them kind of the expertise that we have and a feedback loop, if you will, of seeing what's happening out in kind of the space that we're operating in this particular space with AI. Where are our firms using it? And if you look at, we have some very large firms ranging to some smaller mom and pop. So how do we kind of capture that information? So we have a number of opportunities to be able to reach out to our firms and have discussions with them, roundtables. We have advisory groups. And then we combine that not only externally of what's happening, but internally on using it ourselves. So we're active users of various AI tools. And so it's an ability to have examiners, investigators, surveillance experts that are actually using the tools that we then talk to our firms about. So really getting that full circle perspective.
Yeah, and it is such a different journey from where we started together, which was very focused on the technology side, being infrastructure related, optimizing storage, everything that you do with the consolidated audit trail as well. But this next advent is one that really comes to how the business is led and is really much more of a board level conversation. I'm curious, what use cases do you see as most critical for FINRA, or are you most excited about in the next year?
Yeah, that's almost a trick question. I think there's a level of use cases, and I'll point out, thanks to a working group that we co-hosted together with AWS, but we brought a number of the federal regulators, some state regulators, some other SROs in just to talk about use cases. And one of the things that we did in that event was we saw that there wasn't a standard nomenclature being used. So we would often have, probably like what you guys are having in your firms and your companies, of debates of, well, what is this technology or what is this tool and where is it as a use case? So we started creating at that point, I think we had 9 different use cases, talking to the other regulators, some international regulators, again, with a workshop you hosted, but also with our member firms. We're up to about 14 use cases, and we created an infographic, and I published it on my LinkedIn account. And again, a record number of views on that. But what we started seeing is firms were then able to use it from the perspective of, all right, well, we're comfortable using these 2 use cases, and then let's move forward in that area. And then we have more of a dialogue. So really building that common nomenclature. In that, I think, when you start to get into the compilation of data, we get large amounts of unstructured data. When you think of the over 3,000 firms, we do over 1,000 exams a year. We have our surveillance, we have investigations. We get other data from government agencies as well as other vendors. So how do we arm our staff with the most amount of opportunities to spend their time either talking to firms and understanding their business or addressing the issues that we're identifying? And if they're spending their time trying to gather the data, then compile it that's not a good use of time. So I think from currently right now, I like those type of tools, and then really diving into the models that can get sentiment, like so sentiment analysis is where I think another area. So ranging from, we do a town hall, we get thousands of comments. How do you do some sentiment analysis and do some analysis there? But then also we often ask the industry as well as the general public for feedback. We have a new initiative called FINRA Forward. How can we be a more forward-leaning regulator? How can we modernize our rule book? We've asked for comments, and you can only imagine we got a lot of comments. So how do you start to leverage those tools to get that sentiment analysis and then bring in kind of common themes? And then we were able to turn that kind of over to our investor complaints that come in. So huge volumes of those. And then more recently, and this is your pro tip to take back to your firm, the complaints that come into the firms, there's a requirement that they would report the significant complaints alleging fraud or violations of rules to us. Used to have to do random samplings of those. Now we can ingest all of them and do a sentiment analysis, and it spits out the ones that they kind of suggest that might be within our parameters. So we're able to look at all of those complaints versus a random sample. So it really has allowed us to protect investors and safeguard markets even more. So I think that's kind of will be, as I see our future state, is how do we get to the crux of what we need to look at to protect investors and safeguard markets faster, save firms time, and we save the speed to market so we can get to the saving of investors faster.
Yeah, and identify those needles in the haystack, but really have people focused on the issue as opposed to finding it. There's a lot that you do in that sense of collaboration across all of your member firms. What have you found to be some of the use cases that you think really help drive some of that collaboration together? So you mentioned with the comments and feedback. Are there other examples of some of that industry collaboration that you're doing to make sure that there's good awareness of where there might be points of friction that AI might help ease the burden on some of those firms too?
Yeah, so we've started a number of roundtables. So we start out by asking firms to kind of come to us and where are they using it, where are they seeing it. We do an annual report. We're targeting to come out in December, where we kind of have the ability. It's unlike most regulators that do a priorities letter. Our report actually takes the empirical knowledge we have through the thousands of exams and thousands of investigations of what we're seeing as potential risks or issues for firms throughout the year. We combine that with our intelligence program and our ability to kind of interpret where we think the issues might be coming and produce a report of kind of key areas. AI was mentioned in last year's report. We expect it to figure even more prominently, where we're providing not only kind of risks, issues, but also what are effective uses and where we should be thinking about it. So that's how we kind of start out the year, but then throughout the year, we're having discussions with our member firms on how they're using it, any advice kind of that we see from an effective practice, and then also just leveraging it ourselves. So we have kind of hands-on knowledge in that area. Lots of use cases coming in around the kind of the compilation of data, so it's much like what we've been using. But anytime that you're drafting reports and spending time doing that, summary models, those are all very helpful. And then what we would come back with, where we see it, is having a human in the loop to take a look at it and kind of make the assessment that the model's doing what's intended and you don't have the hallucinations. But that's the kind of dialogue that we've been able to have. I think firms are starting to think about it from a client-facing perspective, and so we've recently hosted a couple roundtables with those firms asking what they're seeing, what the issues are. And so there's more to come as we would produce reports out, like our annual report is what we're seeing.
Yeah. Anything surprising that you've learned through that process?
Good. That's a great question.
Sorry, just threw that one out there.
Yeah. No, I think firms are actually acting very responsibly in this space. Where I think probably the bigger surprises that we're seeing is the third party. Some people call it vendor adoption. So you might have a vendor that's giving you a particular service, nothing to do with AI, and then all of a sudden they've added an AI component on the back end. And then we've also started seeing fourth party kind kind of risk identified. So vendors have vendors, and then those vendors have an AI component. So I think that's been some of the more surprising things, I think, for firms is diving into those contracts. That's not necessarily the technology's wheelhouse. You know, a lot of those will get negotiated by a legal team. And so really kind of making sure you know what you're getting and then how you're using it. Some of them are pretty innovative, and I think as a user, people get excited, but then not thinking through the subsequent risks about data protection and again, what service you're actually getting or what you're actually giving away by using that. So I think that's been some of the more eye-opening discussions we've had.
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing. I think Gartner recently released a report too, where they were saying by 2027, a third of all applications will have some agentic component to it. And 2027 is not so far away. So I think we're seeing it evolve so quickly where, as you said, it's being adopted just organically within the DNA of companies. And it really is the same as .com, and now we're here with AI. You know, it's so important to scale safely in the adoption of these technologies. And there's a lot that you referenced in terms of the roundtables that you're doing. There's a lot of experimentation and different ways that you have to inspire innovation at FINRA. What did you see as the most important lesson learned, or do you look at in terms of making sure that you can scale safely?
I think it's having the right people at the table and building a governance structure. And I think preferably in some type of committee that you have technology, you have the business, you have your general counsel's department, your lawyers, you have your privacy experts, you have your cybersecurity experts, all together talking about kind of what you want to do, what the acceptable use cases are, and being able to kind of see eye to eye in that. This is not an area, I think, that you can offload and say this is just a technology problem. It's just that partnership and making sure that you're thinking through all of the kind of future risks that it could be. How do you make it the safest as possible? And then, you know, kind of where you are. It's even before that, I think as we started to see kind of a lot of attention around AI, you know, all of your employees are out there, you know, consuming news and interested in it, and making sure that they're not, you know, trying different services that are publicly available, using corporate data on that. And so like you can't just kind of assume that you're in a vacuum or you're in a silo, but paying attention to what's out there and then making sure everybody within your entire organization is aware of what the rules are, what the parameters are, what the acceptable use cases are, and that education just goes so far. But if you don't have the governance to process that, I think that's what we learned from the beginning, is having that together is the key.
Absolutely, and that's one thing too, just looking at how you've thought about guardrails so that it takes out a bit of the human judgment too, just in terms of that governance process, automating that as much as possible so people feel safe within the environment without the risk of making an error there. You know, a big part of that too is also just the culture. And you know, I've often, in the almost 8 years that I've had the pleasure of partnering with FINRA, said there's not a culture that I've seen that's so driven and such a culture of builders and engineering. Now, that was when we were much more plugged in under the CIO's organization. This is a very different conversation. So it's so important that we're bringing business leaders to the conversation to really just reshape what the business looks like. And one place that it can sometimes be difficult to do that is as you evolve culturally, and also just upskilling so that people don't feel like that is a technology challenge, that's not for me. Perhaps can you share just some of what you've done with FINRA to really bring along your leadership to be a part of the journey and in terms of really being able to move forward with the strategy that you have?
Sure. I think it's a great point, and one of my favorite early business books was Culture Eats Strategy for Lunch. So you've got to have that ability to bring the people you want with you. I think for us, we saw that it's toned from the top, and one of the things we started out with is having it as a strategic enterprise goal. So I co-lead that goal with our CIO, Steve Randich. So everyone in the organization can see the partnership between the business and technology. And then as a strategic goal, it's approved by the board, it's owned by the management committee and our CEO, Ruppert. He is active in this space, and you know, I'd be on the lookout for a future blog where he's going to be highlighting some of how we're using AI, but he's active in these discussions. And then you start to cascade that through the organization. We had a recent town hall earlier this year that set not one but two records. And the first record was it was the largest segment of any single town hall, and that segment was on our use of generative AI. And the second record it broke, it was the most amount of people that came on to showcase our focus and use of AI. So all aspects of all parts of the organization got to see other leaders, other users, technology, business, legal talk about generative AI. And so that received a lot of attention. And then you start to kind of move down through the organization with various aspects of training, various opportunities where we talk about AI use cases. So we have weekly events where each business can get together and say, this is how I'm using it. And that is huge, like the ability to say, I'm using it for the same job that you're doing, and this is how I'm doing it faster. I'm also a big proponent of that metrics will drive performance. So I've asked our head of kind of AI and advanced analytics to start producing a report of how often people are using our internal chat. So individual users each week by department. And then starting to look at other types of use cases that we can bring forward and what the top use cases are. And then we have plans later this year for like an AI day where we're just gonna build time into everybody's schedule to focus on their AI usage just to really drive that attention. And then they hear our leaders talking about using it. So I think that's from a cultural shift where we're really trying to get at, and not just saying that you have to use it, but arm people with the tools, the time, the training, and educational opportunities, and then just staying on top of it. That's the last thing I think I would say is this technology is moving quickly, as everybody knows, so it's not something you can just build. Yeah. I can only imagine what the training plan looked like 2 years ago in this that has to be updated. So we're super excited. We're going to be offering an agentic training program that's going to be a 2-part series within the next couple weeks. And so we're trying to keep our workforce in line with all the great innovation happening in the space.
That's so awesome. And also just that you really started with that education with your CEO. And making sure that he was armed with the understanding to make strategic decisions. So really just top to bottom, the level of education that you've had, I think has really made your workforce feel like they are a part of the journey and that they are empowered to use the technology in a safe way. So that's really important. And also just love, you mentioned the AI days, something that I'll also just share that I appreciate that's a tradition of FINRA is your annual create-a-thon. So not a hackathon, but rather what use case can we solve for and really build and take to production. And doing that in a hands-on format to reinforce a lot of that learning, I think is so valuable. And I know you've had some great outcomes from that too.
Yeah, so I brought my leadership team in for a day on kind of reassessing what our kind of strategic vision is, and we had our change management team come in and talk about change management, and they actually provided us the overall change management plan, having used our internal chatbot. And then they said they wanted to test their plan against the accuracy, so since it didn't include any proprietary data, they used a level of ChatGPT to say, pick apart this plan to see if it's accurate. And so you're hearing everything from your human resources and training teams leveraging the internal tools, talking to a group of leaders on how they were using it. And then the person, I think, she did an amazing job of, she's like, okay, where did my prompt, not go far enough? Anybody have any ideas? And 3 people kind of joined in and said, well, you could have asked this, or you could have asked to double check here. And so I think making it like a collaborative, kind of effort that is hitting all aspects of the business, and it's not just one particular part, but everything we do could benefit from leveraging some of these tools that we have.
Yeah, agree. And I think the collaborative approach is one that really helps you go faster as well. So, as we're closing, I would love to just hear, we have a broad spectrum from industry as well as public sector. What is your word of wisdom or call to action for this audience? It
would have to be being actively engaged in this space. I'm an active reader. I mean, I've already recommended one book, but
Yep, it's on my list.
yeah, the AI-driven leader was something that was recommended to me from our technology group, and I read it. I've now bought it for my entire leadership team. Other parts of our organization have it. I can see it permeating, and that the book really was hitting on this kind of this really isn't just a technology tool, but it's a shift in kind of your thinking, and then back to your earlier part about shifting culture. But that book particularly was a call to action for every leader to use it as part of their leadership tool. How much time do you spend, doing your daily things of, email triage or meetings or whatever taking up your time? How do you free up 80% of your time to devote to other things, and how could you leverage AI to do that? So this kind of comes with it. They have its own chatbot to kind of be your chief of staff, be your coach, be your board of directors. And so I think that was helpful. I actually spent time with the author last week, and it was like hands-on keyboard or using the voice module and talking to it. And so I think that's, for me, is really the more I use it, the more I see the opportunities. And you can kind of take even your groups to like the next level. We had, back to that sentiment analysis I just talked about, the examiner was looking at, look how much time I saved and look how much more effective I was. And I'm like, what if we imagine a world where we create an opportunity for firms to use that as a service? And so I'm thinking more strategically, and as FINRA's move as a self-regulatory organization, how do we arm our firms with more tools to reduce the cost of compliance and make them more effective and empower them to protect investors and safeguard markets? If I didn't understand the technology, then I would not have been able to kind of come up with that more strategic idea as the staff is using it for more tactical reasons. So I think that active engagement by all leaders is going to be the best way forward.
Yeah, very wise. And yes, the only way to learn is really by doing, and proving is by doing. Well, thank you for your active leadership and for your great partnership, and excited for the future and what we can drive together. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks all.